Well, I mean, we still have a lot of Hearthstone left, 2 rounds in, 3 to go for D number 1. And with that, round 2 has come to a conclusion. Let's get ready for round number 3.
The Hearthstone Championship Tour continues.
Very happy to see Ant taking the win. One, because he's just a nice guy, and also he gets me more points on the board, maybe most importantly for me. But yeah, we are going to be bringing you round number 3. We're going to be bringing you Just Saiyan versus Rase. So we've just seen Rase as well play, so we can see more of that. But before we do, let's check out some of the players and how they've been doing after the first 2 rounds. Ant 2-0, Doug, Saiyan, Zalay, all 2-0, looking absolutely fantastic. So we can get into the game as they get ready to go now. But look at these names on the board, Sal.
Yeah, I mean, slightly different complexion from what we saw from Europe last week as well, where some of the biggest names in the field were dropping to that kind of 1-1-0-2 record. You know, we joked about Hunter Ace being Derek's pick and it not working out particularly well for him, but of course he was expected to do massively well in the field. The biggest names in the field here are the people like Dog, like Zalay, like Amnesiac, and you will see them in there. Amnesiac, sure, 1-1, but a lot of 2-0 records of the most well-known players, and Just Saiyan very much amongst those.
Yeah, I think Amnesiac was actually 0-2.
Was he really?
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
I think,
maybe I'm
those
blind.
were 2 O's
I'll
and
trust
0
you
2s.
for once, Raven.
It's probably the one time I'm wrong.
Yeah.
The one. So let's kick this off. Just Saiyan versus Rase, round number 3. Both players are 2-0, a fantastic beginning to their Swiss run through the Americas playoffs. Now, let's get down to business. Spiteful Druid versus Spiteful Druid. Let's go.
Yup, this is going to be pretty much a featured matchup of the tournament, honestly. Like, it's a kind of a weird situation to walk into where the most popular deck in the tournament is also, like, not likely to be the most often banned.
Yes.
It's kind of a weird scenario, right? Because most lineups will have a bigger problem dealing either with Warlock or Quest Rogue or Control Priest or Aggro Mage. Like, these are all things that pick holes in lineups more so than Spiteful Druid does, which kind of just has a 50% or just above matchup against the entire field. That is both why everyone is choosing to bring it and also why you're not seeing it banned, because there's always a chance that you squeak out the win against it.
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, the deck is just good. It's just full of... well, it's just...
That is what I said in a lot less words.
Yeah, see, you know, I'll condense it down.
Right.
The deck's good. Done.
Moving on.
That's all you need to know. But yeah, very difficult to counter. And I was actually going to ask you, even... Say you're going for this tournament, right?
Yeah.
Say you bring in Spiteful Druid.
Yeah.
Do you even consider in building Spiteful Druid any tech opportunities versus opponent Spiteful Druid? Because you know you're not going to ban it either.
What tech is there though, really?
Well, that's
for
my
the
question.
Spiteful Mirror? Right. I don't think there's like a huge amount of leeway. BGH.
I mean, it beats Spiteful Summoner. It kills the big thing and then trades with the Spiteful.
I mean, what I will say is that, yeah, the Spiteful Druid is kind of just playing out the mirror as best it can, but you're seeing a lot of the other decks in this tournament being teched for the Spiteful matchup. For example, we're seeing Odd Rogue come in, and Odd Rogue on ladder will primarily be running more Ironbeak Owls than Vilespine Slayers, because Vilespine Slayers are so expensive, and Rogue is such a fast deck if you're playing the Odd deck. Most people in this tournament are playing double Vilespine, because killing a big thing with Vilespine is much more important than silencing a taunt against one of your most important matchups, which is the Spiteful Druid. So those techs from other decks are echoing through the tournament, but for the mirror, probably not so much.
Yeah, some big differences in these lists, because, you know, we're calling this a mirror match. There are some notable differences. So, for example, Rase is playing double Vicious Fledgling, a card that can just run away with a game on its own if not checked on the turn it's played early on. But Just Saiyan, he's running such a deep pool of 5-drops, 2 Fungomancers, 2 Druid of the Claw, and 2 Scalebane.
Right.
So the weight is really into that turn 5 power play, or I say turn 5 mana power play when he gets to it for Just Saiyan here. We'll see if that comes into play here, because at the moment, we're in a lot of 5-drops, but doesn't have any in hand.
And it's a fairly evenly contested matchup to this point. Neither player hit their Keleseth, neither player had an extremely rapid start. Both players have drawn one of the UIs, which is obviously the thing you don't want to be doing. The big difference is that as soon as Saiyan can get to that 6, his hand is going to explode with the Spiteful Summoner, assuming he doesn't draw the second UI in the next couple of turns, whereas Rase is going to have to contest board a little bit more honestly until then.
Yeah, he does have the tools to do so, though. Firefly and Druid of the Scythe, great build-ups for that Fungomancer turn. You can create 3 minions onto the board. You normally want to dodge having 4, because, for example, Rase is running 2 mind control techs, Just Saiyan running just the 1. but you don't really want a minion stall, but if you can just get 3 minions on the board versus a relatively low-powered board on the other side, it means that Fungal Mancer is very likely to land and hit 2 targets.
Sure.
And then suddenly, instead of saying, okay, I don't have Spiteful for the big 1 turn, I have 3 just big minions anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe just me having that 1 extra minion all of the time will just be enough to snowball the game, because Spiteful is such a huge impactful minion, but the big boy that it creates can only attack once, right? There's only 1 target it can hit. So if you constantly just keep ahead on board, that is one way you can almost outpace this matchup in the mirror.
The rage.
Charge through instead. I was going to say the other option is just to make the 4-2 and just leave it there to threaten more power on board into the upcoming turns, because that Tar Creeper is just isolated against the Crypt Lord. So making a 4-2 here against a deck that crucially does not have removal, right? Because that's the vulnerability of these Worgen style cards, right? The switch in hand is the low health form is vulnerable to cheap removal spells. The total number of stats is the same. So if you're playing against a deck that just doesn't have that removal available for you, yeah, sure, front load the attack.
That's a 6-4 to me right now, because there's no real way to kill it, like you said,
exactly.
right? You know, the Fungal Mancer's just getting more and more value going forward instead of a bigger taunt minion. But the flexibility that Rase has is nice. He can go for the Druid of the Claw or Fungal next turn, or maybe even option number 3 based on what he draws. Just Saiyan is keeping up though, but with this Fungal Mancer, it means that Rase can clear most of the board at this point. So then suddenly he just keeps that 1 step ahead, as I mentioned.
Time waits for no one.
So yeah, there's a couple of key breakpoints as you approach this stage in the Spiteful Druid mirror. One of which you've alluded to already, which is the dance of the mind control tech, where both players are afraid to commit a 4th minion to board. Which isn't actually as simple as it sounds, because if you don't plan ahead, you can sometimes get stuck in a position where you have to play a 4th minion to the board, right? Like imagine you want to play Fungal Mancer here, but because of the buff, you're then unable to trade off your minions, so you're stuck with a 4th minion in play. Obviously that's not the case, because we can trade off the Firefly, but it's the kind of position that can arise. You've got to be constantly planning those couple of turns ahead to make sure that doesn't arise. The second is evaluating your hand in the context of Spiteful Summoner versus your opponent's potential hand. If you don't have the Spiteful, you need to set up a board that can race a Spiteful.
Yes.
Because you're not winning the game trading everything you have into their 1-12-12 that comes off a Spiteful Summoner. You've got to push base in that position and make their 1 minion too slow.
And like I said, I really like this. This 6-4 is just a problem, even on 1 health. Because guess what? I ain't swiping this deck.
And
So
that 1-2 is going into this 2-3. Absolutely no reason, apart from it means he can't get a 3-6 stolen if he does this.
yeah, I do think there will be a point a little bit later that I think is worth noting that, say you get to turn 10 and Rase has 3 minions on board, he's playing UI regardless of whether it puts him to 4 or not.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the refill is so important.
Sure.
You throw it all on the table and not really care about MCT when you get to that point in the game. So we will see a change in gear going forward, but for now this is just both players, as you said, just juggling it. And look at this. Rase has put Saiyan in a position where you don't just slam Spiteful Summoner on turn 6.
Exactly.
That's how powerful just going that little bit wider and that little bit bigger. And that
and
is
look
a
at the leeway.
return swing that Rase can just drop now. He leaves the Spellbreaker up if he does this, but I don't think it matters.
There's a 6-1 on board. It was just an ugly board to drop a Spiteful into, especially if it turned out to be an 8-8 coming out from the Spiteful Summoner. So Saiyan had to take his 1 turn off to try and consolidate board, and that allowed Rase to be the first person to commit the Spiteful.
Yeah, it is only Emrys, so only an 8-8. Is there something that you wouldn't really imagine muttering as in terms of Hearthstone? But if Saiyan can get one of the 12s, or even the 7-14, then at least it can kind of deal with Emrys.
Crucially, that Glacial Shard, though, has given Just Saiyan a real play this turn, because otherwise all the initiative was over to Rase. But now, with Just Saiyan coming out, freezing that 8-8, he's now essentially reversed the play. We said that Rase got to play the first Spiteful, but essentially Saiyan has the first Spiteful with initiative here because Just Saiyan top decked that Glacial Shard and was able to isolate the 8-8. But I mean, this is just a heavyweight boxing fight straight out of a Rocky movie at this point. Very little strategy, lots of hitting people in the face really hard.
You're saying boxing is a low strategy game?
No, I'm saying fights in Rocky movies
Oh,
do not resemble professional boxing in any way.
You know,
Much like
this is-
Spiteful Druid mirrors do not resemble Hearthstone in any particular way.
Okay, so Rase had an interesting choice there. He could have just traded the Crypt Lord into the Sea Giant and just say, nope, 3 minions
Play
again.
nothing.
But he decided to trade away the smaller minion and go wider. But this terrifies me. Just saying is only playing 1 MCT though. So he is only running the 1.
Yeah.
So it is, you know, half as likely for him to have it than everyone running 2, of course. But this would terrify me. 1 MCT and you lose this game.
Oh, what's this one?
We can see it's not going to be that, but bit of a brave choice by Rase, I would say.
Yeah, it's trade. Where does the 4-4 go? 4-4's trade as well.
They both just high-five each other and
Yeah,
just call it a
exactly.
day.
They could have, just saying, could have taken the potential value trade there and left the 4-4 on board as a target for the ultimate infestation to hit, but it also would have meant leaving his 4-4 on board, or his 4-3 as it would remain. So, you know, much ado about nothing, chooses to just take the trade, and now does have overwhelming resource advantage, but how much does resource advantage matter when you have a 12-12 on the board?
Well, combined with the turn that Rase has, he can Druid of the Claw and Druid of the Saber. Saber can charge, or rush, sorry, into the Ghoul along with the 1-4 on board. And then you can have Druid of the Claw in whatever mode you want and then either trade off the Archivist if you're scared, or if you don't care that much, just go face and try and set up 2-turn. And this is a very strong turn from Rase. Unfortunately, the only unfortunate thing about this turn is he's not 1 turn away from UI. He's 2 turns, so he can't just set up this and then say, well, also I have just 5 damage to face next turn. I like Druid of the Claw charge. Just get him. You want the damage.
Where's your 12-12 going in that world?
Time grows short.
I do like face. I'm a fan. But maybe it's just to avoid any mishaps, maybe you do just trade. Because Deathwing isn't dying to anything this game if you trade.
So how much of your wanting to go face here is influence that you can see the other UI? Like if you knew that thing was going to cast UI, you still want to hit them in the face?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I think so, because if it casts UI again, you're not winning the long game at this point. So you need to finish it up. But we'll see what the recovery here is for Saiyan. He does have Malfurion the Pestilent, an extremely powerful card. Can buy him some time as well with those taunt minions. The issue with Malfurion, though, is the weak follow-up on that turn. Malfurion, great, 2/1/5, some armor and a cool hero power.
Wow.
But what's the follow-up?
You say 1/5s, Raven. There is a 12-8 on the board, and you're playing against a deck that doesn't really play removal from hand. So I'd say you're more likely to just suck it up and take 16 this turn and get Poison Spiders on board if you're going to go down that route.
Sure.
Because you've also seen, I believe, both Druid of the Sides get played by Rase, which is one of the ways he can challenge that from
I'd
hand.
just be worried about stuff like Saronite. Not so much anything killing them, but
Sure.
taunts in the way, and then the Deathwing just kills you on its own. He is going to go for the poison, though.
I agree with this entirely.
Let's see what happens with Rase. Oh, there's the MCT, but the shake of the head shows you how good that is right now. MCT is one of those funny cards where you put it in your deck to make people think about it and play around it, but because they do, you don't end up really playing it that well.
Yeah.
It's just if you don't put it in there, then they don't have to play around it. It's one of those open deck list tools.
Exactly. It's fear equity, and it's a deck that, it's a card that fits nicely with this deck because, as we keep mentioning, it's so low on removal options that it just becomes that swing option when you do fall behind to sometimes just squeeze you out a few extra percentage in lost games. But for an open deck list tournament, the power of it goes through the roof just because of the threat of making your opponent play badly, play scared, fear a card too much.
And this is what I was talking about with that unfortunate turn for Rase, especially with the low power draw he just had, is that imagine if this was actually a 10-mana turn. He just UIs one, trades into the other, and he's like, haha.
Yeah.
He just wins. Like, he just wins off the bat. So maybe just a lack of just enough sprites getting pulled early on caused him a slight issue here. Spiteful Summoner will summon nothing for Just Saiyan in this game, so that is effectively a dead 6-mana 4/4 that does nothing. So that's pretty pointless, but Just Saiyan does have a lot of options here. You just double 5-drop Druid of the Claw taunt into Cobalt Scalebane and just say this is a very powerful board versus your nothing?
Where Where shall I strike?
Don't see anything wrong with that. You can also spread wider. I do kind of like the Scalebane play more. No, actually, no. The problem with Scalebane is that you know you're walking into your opponent's UI turn, so you just give them the juiciest 5/5 in the world to slam with the UI.
Okay, and
There's no real reason to give them that much value off their UI. Like here, they have to UI a 2/3 instead of a 5/5.
well, that's it. And on that note, it explains the 4 minions on board versus the 3. Is that well, if he plays UI,
go ahead.
He isn't playing MC.
Yeah.
You know?
Go ahead and play MCT instead of Ultimate Infestation this turn, friend. You are welcome to.
Yeah, my main thought about the double 5 is that it means that Rase would have to UI the Scalebane, which leaves a buffed 4/6.
He has to UI that turn anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But he leaves a buff. So there's a 5/5 versus a massive Druid of the Claw. And then Just Saying still has tons of resources to just slam down afterwards. Or he can UI the 5/5 and just stay that 1 minion ahead all game.
All of those things that you've said are still true, though, except saying just has a Scalebane in his hand as well.
Yeah, I guess if you look at it like that.
If you look at it through the lens of reality.
I just like playing 2 5/5s. 2 5-drop, should I say.
Is that the only way you're able to add to 10?
Yeah. All these 1s and 2s getting in the way. That's why I miss hero power a lot.
So yeah, now the Scalebane comes down, and now that power is going to get spread. The 3/1, even if it lands on it, it's protected behind that taunt, so nothing can interact. And as I mentioned, unless I've forgotten, unless I've miscounted something, I think both Druid Scythes have been played for Rase, which is a good chunk of his removal already gone. And now, Just Saying is straight back into 3 minion territory.
So, you know I'm known for like my high-level deck building, right?
Sure.
The tech for the Spiteful matchup, I've got it.
Okay.
You play the 1-drop that gives your opponent a 1-drop. Or is it a 2-drop that gives your opponent a 1-drop? You know, it's a 2/3 that creates a 1-drop for your opponent, is it?
Oh, yeah.
So you can MCT. Free tips for everyone at home. Imagine that right now. Unless you just steal the 1-drop back
Just
and you're like,
Marsh Drake or something? Better idea? Or you just want
yeah, but
the cheaper
do
option?
you want to give them a poisonous minion that you can't guarantee kill?
Yeah, that's
like, that's scary.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. Tomorrow, #1 legend with Ravens.
Time goes short.
Like, yeah.
I mean, you have a great point. I talked about this right at the start of the matchup, which is you just see this play out every Spiteful Mirror. Every Spiteful Mirror played at any kind of decently high level. You just see this dance of the mind control tech, where there is only a 4th minion committed to the board when mind control tech just isn't a good turn for your opponent, like we saw with Race's UI turn earlier.
Yeah, and the problem here is if you're a Race and you look at this board, yes, Lich King, very powerful card. Maybe depending on, you know, the actual Doom Pact is one of the better draws in this deck because you can negate your opponent's board advantage.
Sure.
But imagine Doom Pact wasn't there. You never come back from these kind of scaling minions constantly being 2 minions, 1 minion ahead on board. You're always behind if you and your opponent have the same or roughly the same hand size. Whereas that kind of tech can just switch this. Imagine you steal one of them. Yes, you've given them a 1-drop, who cares? And it also makes their trades awkward because they still have 3 minions. So they still can't play another minion unless they trade off.
Saying now just smashing his second Ultimate Infestation. This allows him to push a ton of damage this turn and draws the rest of his deck all in one go, which is already buffed by Keleseth as well. So it's just a tremendous amount of power that he can output in the next few turns. And yeah, Rase has that 1 potential clear available to him, but beyond that, he's not getting very far.
What do you like as the follow-up to this Doom Pact? I'm torn.
Honestly, nothing.
Vicious Fledgling, though.
Yeah.
I think you might have to. That card's the one that's going to dig you out of this hole.
There goes the Keleseth. That is 7 cards left in the deck that are not getting buffed. Saiyan has already played his, so he's just got such an overwhelming value advantage at this point, even if he's not able to be aggressive enough to get the kill, which is unlikely in the first place. Don't think Rase has the gas left to keep up at this point.
No, I'd have to agree. Like you said, you said double Spellbreakers, just low impact at this moment in time. The Spellbreakers aren't in the game aren't in the deck for this matchup.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most frustrating minions for me in the game right now. Crypt Lord just gets so big, especially if you play it on curve and follow up, that it just never dies. It's so annoying. Again, less so in this matchup early on because you don't want to go wide, but in the matchups you can go wide, it's absurd.
Well, saying if you're playing 4, I think you're playing 6.
Yeah, he's working out the merits of hero power, but Glacial Shard just seems way too powerful right now.
Yep.
You just negate the attack of the minion, and that just means, guess what? Like, Rase plays some stuff, great. Justsaiyan's got another turn on top of this and attacks with all of these minions and Fungomancer, well, 2 Fungomancers depending, Druid of the Claw Charge, hero power. Justsaiyan can pretty much close his eyes and pick what he wants to do at this point.
Yeah, I think Saiyan had to keep committing at that point. He already had 4 minions in play, so the potential game-losing situation is that Crypt Lord gets stolen. The way you minimize your chances of Crypt Lord getting stolen is just to dump everything else you can in your hand as well.
Also, the Glacial Shard and the Mole actually do a reasonable amount of damage with that Curlseth buff. You know, 1 mana 3/2 on the board, that's nothing to be sniffed at, especially when you add all this damage from hand that Saiyan has. You could just kill him next turn.
Let's see.
The scourge will devour all.
Here comes the MCT. Yoink.
Ooh,
Wow. Oh, Saiyan,
dear.
that's the you said it, Sol. The potential game-losing situation is if MCT hits the Crypt Lord, and you see it in Saiyan's body language right now, is that was by far worst-case scenario.
I mean, let's rewind. Was there any reason to go 4 minions in the first place? Because he committed 4 minions, and then it seemed to stop and think about the rest of his line at that point. Obviously, he wanted to Glacial Shard the 5/5. I think that was a given that turn. It's one of the largest minions left in the deck that he does want to lock out with that Glacial Shard. He's got plenty of, big, chunky dudes in his hand. He could have made a 3-minion board that turn, I'm pretty sure.
I think the potential of actually just Saronite Glacial, hero power, you push 3 damage, you lock out the 5/5, and then you have 3 minions on board to double fungal, and then just go all in at that point, because that's potentially where the damage is just too high for an MCT to matter. Yeah, there were options for Saiyan. He did go for something that had an element of risk and got punished for it, basically. Let's see if he can dig his way out. I can't even recall, has Saiyan got Spellbreakers left? He only has 2 cards and I think he burnt 1.
Saiyan only plays 1 Spellbreaker in the list to begin with, I believe, yes.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, 1 Spellbreaker, 1 MCT, but he has like a million factors.
So much more late game, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he plays 2 Archers.
Yep.
Wow, he really wants to cast those UIs.
It is a big boy deck. Now with all these buffs in play, the double Spellbreakers in hand for Rase aren't looking like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, decent shapes to take on any big minions that are left from Saiyan as well. Rase has advantage in terms of how many cards in the deck. It's 3 cards up.
Yeah.
What
And-
if?
Other than, and one of those cards is Malfurion, right? Which is a huge deal. Wow. 1 man control tech. We've talked about that card all game. And it came down to a mind control tech. I don't know if Saiyan can get out of this. Because the issue he has with double Archivist is once your UIs are gone, it's just an 8 mana 4/7. Like, it's not a good card when your opponent's playing like 2 to 3 minions almost as big.
8 mana 5/8 is a little bit better though.
Oh, it is buffed, yeah, you're right. I cannot argue with you saying that is just factually a little bit better. It's +1/+1 better. Yeah, and there's all 3 of these minions and a hero power gets through the Crypt Lord.
Yep. And we've reached the point now where if Rase stalemates the game, then he's coming out on top. Clearly, I mean, even if you argued that the hero power from Death Knight Malfurion could offset, well, A, that's not true. B, Rase still has his Malfurion left to draw anyway.
Well,
Like,
A, that's a lie.
Yeah.
It's like, and there is no B because you lied about A.
A, wash your mouth out with soap and water, you filthy liar.
I do think it's about look at the hand. The fact that Rase can play Saronite, Chain Gang, and Fungomancer in 1 turn, that's just a board in itself at this point.
Yeah.
Even if everything gets wiped. Slightly the Guitar Creeper out.
Death is eternal. My turn is not.
You thinking about Hero Pound the 7-2?
It's the 7-3 or the 5-2, right? That's the decision.
Yeah, because of the breakpoints on the Guitar Creeper. And 7-3 is just, you know, you'll go to face the once if you can get through. There's no way he makes it this turn.
Like I said, the game plan for Rase at this point is pretty simple. Just stalemate the game for as long as you possibly can. Just stop Saiyan from making inroads.
I'm thinking this might be, especially because there's no Malfurion, just the Saronite Chain Gang Fungomancer turn. Mainly because if you play Saronite on its own, I feel like the fact that it could be buffed means just more minions have to trade into it. You don't want the little minions to get more value.
I do hear that argument. Like, I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective, which is there is a finite number of minions for Rase left to kill right now, and then he wins the game. So you could Saronite Greedy Sprite Hero Power and kill an extra minion this turn, and that's just like one minion off the checklist that you need to deal with. Seems like Rase favors your play, and like I said, I am totally down with the logic of this play, because now one of those 4/5s can test this entire board.
Yeah,
state.
exactly.
Not quite the situation because of the hero power that can come through, but if Saiyan starts hitting things with his face and gaining attack instead of gaining armor, yeah, we'll take it.
Oof. Saiyan's looking at that mind control tech in his hand and going,
What's this one do?
your brother really messed me up this game. Another Grand Archivist, like you said, just 5/8. It's gonna chill. Double fledgling, let's go. Rase just still has Malfurion. This is pretty funny as well because, you know, you may watch this and go like, why is Rase taking so long? You know, like, oh, you know, he's so far ahead, so on, so on. But Rase is actually just working out any way he loses at this point. He's just trying to figure out, is there anything that I do that makes me lose this game? And he's just making sure everything's safe, everything's steady, because he is so far ahead. Train the 2/2 off just to dodge the MCT. And with 2 vicious fledglings, I'm sure if you've seen it on ladder, you'll be aware that those 2 can beat you up pretty quick, especially when fatigue's involved. Is Saiyan just doing the maths now and going, yep, it's gonna be game. I don't know who gets out of this one.
I'm not seeing it either. There is a 2/7 Crypt Lord that can stop these fledglings connecting to face, but these fledglings don't need to connect to face. Rase doesn't need to connect to face and hasn't needed to for a long, long period of time in this game.
Slightly known with the buff, it does mean that you can't even double trade hero power in.
Sure.
But I do wonder if because of that, Saiyan just has to go face.
Whoa. Well, Rase can now at least play a 4/7 if he wants to, which he hasn't been able to do for the past couple of turns.
Wait, was the fatigue 2? What was the fatigue that
On the previous turn, I think he fatigued for 2, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 3 and was like,
Let's see.
do you just want lethal?
5+4.
Yeah. But just aim it at his face, it's fine, trust me.
What's this one do?
So now, if Malfurion is Race's last card, does he have to take the Ultimate Infestation tie? Would it even tie at that point?
I tried this.
Oh, he only took 1 last turn, even saying.
Oh, okay.
So now if he gains armor in this position, he
yeah.
actually survives the Ultimate Infestation again.
Pesky Crypt Lord. And lack of Malfurion for Rase is actually hurting him. Did we speak too soon?
It's possible. I mean, I wasn't counting on Malfurion being buried this
Yeah,
deep.
same.
Running out of cards.
Oh,
There it is.
It's a poison. Now it becomes very tricky as to how Just Saying deals with this. The frustration here is if he has to hero power into one. But Rase is going to trade, right? Use the hero power for damage?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Because it means more damage has to come back the other
Exactly,
way
exactly.
to go through his longbows.
And he's looking pretty okay. I wonder what his last card is, I actually don't know. There's the 3, so now the armor is actually going to be negated, even if Saiyan goes for armor and do, 1 damage to him next turn.
Yep.
This might just be too much. He can push 4, but 4 doesn't even kill the Archivist. So that's game right there. Saiyan looks like he had it in the bag. But the mind control tech from Rase had something to say about that, stealing the massive Crypt Lord and defending his board long enough to just outlast Saiyan. That game flipped on its head a couple of times for me.
Yeah, it was a 1 in 6, obviously, of that mind control tech. I think in the end, when the Saiyan chose to play out all 6 minions, but it was a 1 in 6 that possibly didn't even have to be presented as an option to Rase. I think Saiyan could have made a decent board state there and continued to play around mind control tech for much, much longer that game and made the swing happen much later, perhaps too late, if at all, in the remainder of the game. Worth going back and looking at for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the, I'd say, more sort of intricate Spiteful Mirrors we've seen in the past, but still a great game. We're going to be right back with game number 2, so don't go anywhere.
Coming up in the final round of playoffs next weekend, we travel to the other side of the world for the Hearthstone Asia Pacific Summer Playoffs. The best players there will gather to begin their quest towards the Summer Championship. Featuring Surrender, the 2017 Summer Championship winner. Does he have what it takes to do it again? Coming in hot, a 2017 Asia Pacific Winter Champion, B787 re-enters the fray. Who could forget his match against Lojam at the 2017 Asia Pacific Winter Playoffs? And a champion enters the competition. Tom60229, the reigning world champion, and all his talents will be on full display. Who will be able to stop him, and who will be cast aside like so many others? The action continues next weekend with the 2018 Hearthstone Championship Asia Pacific Summer Playoffs.
We had Europe last weekend, we have Americas this weekend, and guess what? We have Asia Pacific next weekend. Looking forward to that one, especially since I just love seeing what that group of players brings to the table, because there's always something from Asia Pacific. It's great, I love it.
I just love APAC playoffs in general. It's just like the Twilight Zone. They you know, you get to see a bunch of players that you don't get a huge amount of exposure to a lot of the time. They all have their different ideas on decks and the meta game. We're all delirious because it's the middle of the night, so you know anything can happen.
And I get to see Surrender play.
Exactly.
I mean, that's all I want in life. But let's get on with this match here at the Americas Summer Playoffs. Just Saiyan versus Rase. Rase 1-0 above. Gonna go on to the Paladin now, and Saiyan still on his Druid.
Does land the Diamol, at least, just saying. This is not the most explosive start you will ever see in the world from an even Paladin. And it's one of the keys to defeating Spiteful Druid consistently. If you're not a control deck that's trying to outlast them, it's getting ahead of them on the board early and just never letting go of that board.
I thought you would go in there with, that's one of the keys to beating a Paladin. They draw badly in the opening. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Tar Creeper's really nice though as well. Like Paladin has never gets to trade well into that guy at all.
We have turned our curse.
What do you make of this newer style Paladin with the Argent Commanders?
I like it. I think even Paladin has slowly evolved into where it's a little. It started off actually quite low curve and aggressive, and then people went kind of later game with it and put like some bigger stuff in there, like Lich King and so on. And then
Silver Sword.
Silver Sword, exactly. And then when Silver Sword, and it couldn't really be a burst win condition anymore because of how much weapon removal was being played, people started to look for other sources of burst damage. And that's where Avenging Wrath came along. It's also where combinations of like Balinar and Argent Commander came along. And that combination is insane. Argent Commander itself, just not a bad card. It can get the job done if you're limited to, you know, half the cards in the game to build your deck out of.
Yeah, the best thing for me about it is that it just lets me, has a nostalgia factor for me, because when Argent Commander was a 4/3, which was the good old days, that card was just in every deck back in the day in Hearthstone, like beta, you know.
Argent Commander's killing Azure Drakes.
Yeah.
That was Hearthstone.
Oh, God, I miss it. Bring them back.
Yeah, but Argent Commander's just not a bad card. I mean, Omega Zero put it in a playoff deck like on purpose. Like he didn't have to play. He wasn't playing an even deck. There's no such thing back then.
Yeah.
He had all the cards available to him, and he played Argent Commander.
Let's have a look at Saiyan's Rogue, though. It is the odd Rogue, as you can quite see by the big Baku in hand for just saying there. Not a card you ever really want to draw. The only times it gets any kind of value is in the sort of stalemate aggro matchups where no one's really killing each other, and then you just drop the big boy on the board. But in general, the rest of his hand isn't shaping up to be too bad if he can get this fledgling off. The problem here is Race. Coin, Saranac Chain going to be a bit of a defensive option, then Call to Arms, Call to Arms.
Yep.
Odd Rogue has no game versus that card. It's good to point out as well, this is the difference in each of these players' lineups. The one difference, the Rogue is a Quest Rogue versus Odd.
Right.
Odd Rogue. And that's alter their bans accordingly as well.
It's very true, yeah. Paladin banned out, or Saiyan's Paladin getting banned, Race's Q-Block getting banned. Very much reflective of those rogue archetypes that are being brought.
This is a good feeling, though, as saying, when you have the Tar Creeper down against a Call to Arms, you're like, well, probably most of your minions go into my Tar Creeper. Okay, you know, fair trade, I'll take it. Hench Clan. Hench Clan's a really weird card in this matchup, mainly because it's an aggressive card, but it's also a board objective for your opponent to kill. So it works in like a defensive option as well, because they can't just ignore it unless they silence it. But just saying to just go for the Fungomancer, more health on that Tar Creeper is never a bad thing. And just more stuff to be able to trade up with these minions.
Consecration is a pretty clutch draw at this point. I think Rase might have to just take the reset and fight from behind here, because otherwise he's playing Call to Arms, and there's a very good chance that his next wave of Call to Arms minions just gets value traded again. You know, the 2/2 dagger from Rogue can be very aggressive, but it's also just an incredible amount of board control.
Well, I was actually like looking at Race's hand. This play, yes, it doesn't end up being the best board state for Race, just a 1/1. But look, Argent Commander is an option to take down one of the big threats. Vicious Fledgling, you know, Hench Clan, for example, even with an attack. Avenging Wrath to kill small, wide stuff. Or Call to Arms if it's just a middling option. I actually think Race's options here are really nice. I'd definitely rather have the board, of course, but I don't know. Argent Commander into the 3/3. The problem is the dagger does clean up Argent Commander, but that's still a good chunk of damage, and there is Avenging Wrath in hand and still the Call to Arms as a backup.
Just saying, choosing to SI the 1/1 there as opposed to just going double big boy threats with Fledgling and Hench Clan does make him a little bit more vulnerable to just that kind of play. Double Juggler. Oh boy, this could make a mess of this board state real quick.
Yeah, or you could just be Race and be brave and just Call to Arms. The one thing I'd be worried about with playing the Hench Clan as well is just like Blessner Kings. And then you just lose one anyway. It's just a worry with just leaving a 1/1.
Okay. So that means you'll take it. Obviously, the Flappy Bird is the one you really wanted to kill, but killing any given minion with Knife Jugglers off Call to Arms that you didn't even have at the start of the turn, you have to consider a win at that point.
Here comes Hench Clan, and most importantly, here comes the pink Flappy Bird. There's 7. Just saying. It's just going through all the emotions in the sun as he completely whiffs on any of the good ones.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this emotion. That is the none of these are Wind Fury emotion. It's a core emotion to any human that has played Hearthstone.
Well, I think it's a step further. That was the first lean back. And then when the hands go to the face, it's, oh, none of these are also plus health or plants.
Or stealth.
Or stealth, yeah. None of these are all the other options that would be great for me. They're literally terrible in every aspect.
Yep.
And that honestly could be game losing. The Fledgling not living next turn. Now Argent Commander gets there. As a pretty clean trade. If he wants to, he might even go for Hero Power Tarim at this point.
It's possible, right?
Just to put a big taunt in the way of Aggro Rogue or Odd Rogue.
Either way, you can trade your Loot Hoarder first, right?
Yes.
It doesn't change anything, so you might as well do this and see what happens. Second Avenging picked up. The only thing that's changed is the amount of burst damage that Rase now has in hand, so he can just choose to be incredibly aggressive based off that if he wants to.
Yeah, I mean, if you fast forward, you know, in your mind, these turns, whatever Rase plays this turn will be good. Looks like it might be Tarim. And whatever he does next turn will probably, at worst, be a quality Avenging Wrath for 7 damage or something, or 6.
Right.
Plus the minions he has on board. So this is looking like it's already spiraled out of control for Saiyan, as Rase does appear to be going for the Sun Creeper Tarim. Yeah, and then look, there's, you know, 8 to 6 roughly damage available here with the equality. Plus another 9. Plus another 6. Yep, that's the game. There's no way out, especially when you're staring at your opponent's hand and there's still 6 cards, 7 on the draw, and you're like, yeah, that's some damage in there somewhere. I am going to die. And Rase takes a game there with the Paladin, and I think that just shows you continually just the power of Paladin in the game at the moment. Like, they do that to aggro decks, and they can still beat Warlock and the slower, more controlled decks, because they have that equality Avenging Wrath that just almost just bypasses taunts, because, for example, Void Lord, the 1 damage kills the Void Lord, but then the Void Walkers don't actually summon until after the Avenging Wrath is finished. So there's so much damage late game. There's often not a lot you can do.
Yeah, the play I really want to talk about there from Rase, obviously the Knife Jugglers were game-winning because of the outcome, but also just he went for that play in the first place, right?
Yeah, I didn't think he'd go for Call to Arms.
There were 2/3/3s on the board, and he had an Argent Commander in his hand, and you're looking at it on face value like, oh, this is okay. Like, yeah, he smacks it down with his dagger afterwards. Obviously, remember, he'd already cast 1 Call to Arms that game already, so his 2-drop pool was very thin, and he hadn't seen a Knife Juggler yet. So he knew there was actually a pretty high probability of hitting Jugglers from that position. Of course, hitting them 1 and 2 off the order and then nailing the Juggles to kill one of the minions was perfect world, but he took the shot.
Yeah, and he still had so much more damage. Even, you know, he had the Tyrant, which was effectively the lethal setup, just because the 3/3s are so difficult, and multiple minions are so difficult for the odd row to deal with, because they want to be the one that's being dealt with, not the other way around. They are not reactive that well. But also, just the loot hoarders in that list is actually a big deal. I was talking to Admirable and Killer about this, and it's like, people often don't talk about how powerful Loot Hoarder is in combined with Call to Arms.
Oh, it's
it just keeps the gas going. It's actually kind of nuts. But that is 2-0 for Rase so far. Is he gonna clean sweep? Just saying. We'll find out after this. round number 3 of Swiss here at the Americas Summer Playoffs. Just saying versus Rase. Rase. He's going to be leading 2-0 so far, and only has the Quest Rogue to get a win with as his last deck. He is going to be going up against Odd Rogue, as we see Baku again in Just Saiyin's hand, but at least he can throw away this time.
Yeah.
I'll ask you, I know the answer to this question, but how's this matchup so far?
It is good if you're the rogue, bad if you're the rogue. That's your question?
Yeah, I hear you're playing it safe with this analysis.
Yeah, it's real bad for Quest Rogue. Particularly, Rase isn't really playing any anti-aggro tech. There's no like backstab, for example, that can kill a vicious fledgling. There's no fan of knives that more aimed at paladin than it is at this matchup, but can still come in useful. This is just a standard, fairly greedy Quest Rogue build. So playing some minions, cold-blooding them, and hitting you with them is quite effective against what Rase is trying to do with his deck.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of answers to minions like Vicious Fledgling that I imagine if other players of Go-To-Buy, he's going to just coin that out onto it, as opposed to the natural hero power onto, because it's a good hero power play. See Valera in the hand there for Rase. You could say, oh, well, Valera might buy him some time. Is he making it to turn 9, is my question.
Unlikely. So as these kind of cards are getting drawn, Valera, Rase is also playing 2 copies of Igneous Elemental, playing 1 Elven Minstrel, and then obviously the regular greedy cards that are staple, the Zola, the Sonya, etc. So I mean, no, greedy cards is the wrong phrase. The extra value cards that are staple in the deck. Because of that, because he has a very high value build with double Igneous Elemental and with Valera, these 2 matchups that he has against the Rogue now and the Spiteful Druid to come are essentially free rolls for him, because his build is so greedy and so resource intensive that he can almost always outlast the Control Warlock. So that's the matchup that he can just come down to and just fall back on in the end. So if he picks up the win before that, great for him.
Yeah, I will say that the time's probably passed right now, but if Rase had opened with Bounce Glacial Shard, that's when you're talking. That's when there is a chance versus any hyper-aggressive deck. But he doesn't have it. He does have the Scale Hide, but that's mainly as a lifesteal minion for when they are 5/5s and not for when they are 1/3s. Currently, no good answer to this Vicious Fledgling whatsoever.
The one little race of sunshine here is that there is Prep Vanish available. Now that's something that you can often use against aggro decks to try and make something happen, and that if you can use it as a bouncer for yourself as well as, quote, clearing your opponent's board, you can sometimes turn the corner. But the fact there is an unanswered Vicious Fledgling in play right now is just threatening to make such a mess of this game state for Rase.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Saiyan's Fledgling can get some work done, and it's not going to be all the worst options of Taunt, maybe even untargetable, but we'll see what happens here. He does have hero power, he does have Deadly Poison. Also, it's available of just playing, say, 2 minions in a Cold Blood to just go wider onto the board. I think he might want a hero power to take down one of these minions, though.
So many options.
I think what happens first is he hits with the Fledgling.
Light protects.
Well, if he's going to put Cold Blood on the Fledgling, that's definitely not the first thing that happens, right? We saw this last game. He's just going to push for the Wind Fury and a ton of damage if he does it this way.
Stealth, okay.
Like, stealth is the next best thing, yeah. So the scary thing there is that if you whiff as hard as he did in the last game, you don't really have a great way to protect your Fledgling against the minions that are on board. You don't have the mana left to dagger. Deckhand doesn't charge because you don't have that dagger up. So those 2 1/2s will just be sat hanging around on the board. But this is a great example of a card game player, right? He doesn't let the bad beat from the previous game affect his thinking, affect his assessment of the probabilities.
Honestly, if I was saying that, I probably would have daggered and deckhanded into the 2 minions and let the Fledgling hit just on its own. Like guard the Fledgling from any onboard damage, because I'd just be terrified. Saiyan doesn't know what's going on.
I'm very confused by the play he's seeing come back the other way here from Rase.
I don't know why, though.
He's probably just trying to work out what the contents of Race's hand are right now, because it is quite a strange hodgepodge of things, right? So
It's cards.
yeah. So Saiyan's probably got a read on what these 3 left-hand cards are, at least 1 or 2 of them, and is slowly eliminating those options from his list as he sees the plays develop.
Yeah, you'd probably imagine at least one of them's a bounce effect, because he just wouldn't have played one yet. So we're not had too much value from it. Might actually go for Zola now onto the Flame Elemental. Oh, okay, he's going for the prep vanish. He wants to reset the board, say a big no to Vicious Fledgling, and now Saiyan doesn't have to wonder what most of those cards were. He already knows.
You just found out, buddy.
You gotta ask yourself, you could just reset the Fledgling and say, okay, well, you literally can't keep doing that. I'll play Fledgling. What cards are you gonna have to actually kill him off?
Yeah. He did reduce the Fledgling by 4 attack in the process, though. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. What's the
Hello.
Brewmaster? I think he was just wishing for a deckhand there. Or a Glacial Shard. Saiyan does have a extremely aggressive hand as well, and that might sound a bit silly. Well, Odd Rogue, of course it's aggressive, but literally Leroy, Poison, deckhand, you know, that's all just going face at this point. It's not the Hench Clan, not some, some of the slightly slower minions in the list. Not the Blink Foxes, for example. Even Tar Creepers actually would be pretty bad right now.
Such a perfect specimen.
It's Flame Elemental number 2 on the board, 3 and 4 in hand, and then the 5th is the Brewmaster, but that is a ton of mana when you need 5 more to play the quest afterwards with your prep already used on the Vanish. Meanwhile, Saiyan cannot hit a Wind Fury to save his life, or more importantly, his undefeated record in this Swiss right now.
It's got to be frustrating at this point. I don't care how cool of a cucumber you are, you probably just getting a little bit annoyed about this Fledgling not playing nice. But he does have a lot of damage. I think he needs to get this dagger up though this turn. Like, he's just not daggered all game.
Right.
And that's 4 damage for 2 mana. That is a good play.
It's also kind of the point of the deck.
Yeah, that's the point of the deck is 4 damage for 2 mana.
Yeah,
It's very good. With the poison as well, so now he is going to get it going. He has Leroy. Can't really combo it with anything outside of a Cold Blood draw, but one's already gone. Now Rase has some value, but he didn't really want value at this point. He wanted prep. He wanted anything to freeze the board, another Vanish, just something.
Yeah.
Mimic Pod, it just doesn't matter unless you Mimic Pod exactly Glacial Shards, but even then that doesn't matter because the Fledgling's stealth.
There's no card. There's no Wax Elementals in Race's build, which is the only card that, theoretically gets played in Quest Rogue that would get him out of this situation in some worlds, but he just has no defense to the Leroy, the weapon, and the Fledgling that are coming through.
So what he's going to try and do is at best set up lethal for next turn, if nothing's traded. Or a lethal out, should I say. So he can, he can draw or he can Mimic Pod into either bounce, charge minions, etc. Just anything to keep him alive long enough to just get him killed, because Race just isn't lasting much longer. He does have the Scale Hide as well, so next turn he can quest Scale Hide.
But there is no.
So there is no next turn, yeah. Don't get me wrong, I am seeing this. I am going through Race's mind as opposed to what both players have clearly on the board, and Saiyan fights back. But that matchup was extremely favored for him as well, so might just be a comfort to just, okay, not 3-0, get a win on the board. Let's move on now.
Yeah, and a nice little bit of good manners from Saiyan at the end there, making sure to attack with the Fledgling last, so not to waste anyone's time with the Adapt. Pro play at its finest.
You never know, you've got to use every trick you can to throw your opponent off.
I guess, yeah. But as you said,
Adapt, go for Wind Fury, and then pick the worst taunt, and then just go in. Sometimes it works.
that matchup was not the one that Race is worried about, though. That was more or less a free roll for him. If he picked up the win there, sweet. He's out of there early and he's waiting for the next round. But Spiteful Druid is a little bit more winnable, and then after that, because he has such a greedy build, the Control Warlock is where he's really looking at. Although some of the very, very best Control Warlock players are starting to say that you can maybe squeeze a win out of that matchup. I don't see it personally.
Well,
I think they're playing against some very bad Quest Rogues is what's happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you say that, you mean not that it's possible, but that it's doable often, right?
Yes,
as opposed to like, well, yeah, you can win. If they're being, literal, yes, you can win that one game.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't see how, and I feel like you know, Warlock players are becoming the 2018 Rogue players of old and just saying, oh, I'll just win every single matchup no matter what.
It's not far off, though, is it?
I never said they were lying.
No,
So I
okay.
never said they were lying. I just said
fair
they're
enough.
saying it.
Sure.
Let's move on to game number 4. Spiteful Druid versus the Rogue. As you said, more winnable than the Odd Rogue. Definitely a much better matchup. But Spiteful Druid can also just get you.
Yep.
And they also provide a lot of like awkward shaped minions to kill for the Quest Rogue too. You know, like early on, they're kind of hard to just chip away at the board.
Sure.
Quest Rogue does a lot of 1 damage. And sometimes not enough 1 damage.
That is double Shadow and Igneous Elemental in hand for Rase, though. So that is Quest almost wrapped up already. Just saying, does have a fairly aggressive curve, though. About as aggressive as a deck that only plays 1/2 can realistically be expected to get. But yeah, the difference between, you know, this kind of mid-rangey aggressive deck from the Druid and the more outright, you know, face damage style deck from the Odd Rogue is that Vanish is just so much more powerful a card against Spiteful Druid because it costs them so much more mana to then reinvest into building their board again, whereas Odd Rogue can just flood out against you super quick.
Yeah, and a lot of Odd Rogue, Odd Rogue's as close to Hunter as you're ever going to get in terms of the damage is more or less just from hand all the time.
Have you tried Hunter? I heard that's quite close to Hunter.
It is, yeah. It's just a shame it's not close to any other deck that's got a high win rate right now, but I'm still working on it, so
Okay.
give me another week. We'll get there.
There's no way you kill this 3/1, right? Is that what he's considering? If I'm Rase, A, I don't want to give the extra mana over to Just Saiyan. B, I want that 3/1 hanging around so I can just smack my 2/3 into it and get my Flame Elemental.
A very real problem here is that, oh, that's a great draw. What Saiyan needs to do is just hold off until he gets Spellbreaker. So he can just silence the Igneous. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
If he draws Spellbreaker, that's a real big problem for Rase.
I mean, for Rase, this Igneous Elemental is kind of a luxury right now. The rest of his hand is so solid, particularly now, that he has many avenues of quest completion available to him.
I mean, that bad boy mixes some things up, right?
Yes.
Do you like charge minions for 1 mana as 5/5s in your deck?
So if I'm Rase here, I'm looking at Firefly and Poke the Crypt Lord. Does poking the Crypt Lord really matter that much? You want to be able to like push through it with your charge minions on the following turn, so you can then like trade your Igneous Elemental
keeping
into
it
something
down's
more
fine.
aggressive.
I will say, these are the turns that make Quest Rogue, looks kind of silly with the board, but these are turns that make Quest Rogue quite hard. Because a lot of your minions don't do anything
Right.
for most of the game, but you need to utilize them in the correct way to get to the late game where you win.
See, I guess against the expected play of Saronite Chain Gang, it doesn't really matter if you do the extra point of damage to the Crypt Lord because there's a 2/3 taunt there for you to smack your Igneous Elemental into regardless. So taking the 1 damage on the Crypt Lord just doesn't actually achieve a great deal.
Sure, yeah, goes up to 6 anyway. He's playing Maeve as well. Interesting choice from this. A lot of people are Valera diehards. It's all not interested whatsoever in my role.
No, I was just thinking, because you know people like claim that there's like that class identity thing, like it used to be, people used to say that like, Garrus was always pirate and Magni was always control or something like that. Like, for me, like Quest Rogues are always mine.
Oh, really?
Sure, like that's the way it works in my head. I have no real data to back that up, but that's what my brain tells me.
I can see that. They have the newest rogue hero, Quest Rogue, the newest rogue archetype. You could say Odd Rogue is new. It's not. Odd Rogue's still just rogue hitting them in the face.
Yeah, but this
I remember when the Miracle Rogue did that.
This was the big turn the Race needed, because now he has 2 0-mana charging South Sea deckhands on the following turn, and a 1-mana one to follow that up. He has an equipped dagger, which of course, the value of holding on to all of his dagger charges when he has this many deckhands to play with is huge, and 5 mana remaining to fill out that quest, which means Saiyan has to understand this is the last possible turn he is holding on to any kind of board advantage now.
Yeah, I'm terrified, if I'm just saying right now. This is so awkward. The quest being done this early, apart from do exactly what Saiyan's about to do and just go face.
Yeah, that's all you've got.
You're just like, well, I guess this game is kind of out of my hands at this point, which is the feeling that Questro kind of generates in a lot of its enemies.
Right. There's the 5.
The worry as well is Saiyan wasn't playing, or isn't playing, should I say, Leroy in his Spiteful Druid. That was a bit of a common pick. So he doesn't have that, extra reach. He does have like Druid of the Claw, but that's a big difference between 4 and 6 damage from hand as well.
Kill this with a deckhand because you want to trade the 5/5 Flame Elemental into the 5/3. The deckhand's a higher value minion, so you want to keep as many of those alive as you can. Rase just making sure everything is as tidy as possible here.
It's also actually a big deal that these deckhands are not boars, because the boars would have charge if just saying MCT'd one.
It's a great point.
Whereas it's just a 5/5 if you don't have a weapon. Like, there's
It's
just
a great
nothing
point.
you can do.
And that 5 damage is everything because, just saying might be on the plan where it's just survive until come hell or high water, he's able to try and fire an ultimate infestation, be that through natural from hand or from Archivist.
Or even,
And he needs extra damage to make that an out.
look at this number, right? If you go 5 to face, he runs 2 Druid of the Claws.
Yeah.
That could just be game right there off the top. He survives that 1 turn to draw a Druid of the Claw, but they're not charge minions because they're not the boars, so there's nothing he can really do about it right now.
Wow.
Would anyone like some gas? This is 1 scale hide away from a bad time. Sol's high level and very eloquent casting as always.
Sometimes, if you know what these cards do, you don't need us to add anything to the game.
Well, that's my excuse, but when I say that to you, you don't agree.
No, it's the difference between, not having to add anything to the game and not being able to add anything to the game.
I'm just laughing at TJ and Admirable. Well, this is looking awkward. The dagger's there as well, and available to cast anyway.
This one do.
For Race, so this might just be too much damage. The Archivist is going to pull off the ultimate infestation. This target makes the world of difference from Saiyan's point of view. Oh, nice shot.
All a formality, though.
Yep.
In the real world, like you said, from Saiyan's point of view, it gave him a hope, but there is so much charge to spare in Race's hand. And my pick, Race, is going to go out to a 3-0 record in the Swiss. Saiyan still right in there, though, at a 2-1 record. Long way to go for him, and he's put in some great performances so far, I'm sure, as well. Still looking like a front runner for qualification.
Yeah, and I really